Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a review of a legendary film camera, the Pentax Z6. Okay, so first things first, this thing is a monster of an SLR. This is pretty much the SLR that shoots the largest film format out of any of the ones I know. So, like the name says, the Pentax shoots 6x7 centimeter film. Now, that doesn't sound too big until you realize that's about 5 times the surface area as regular 35 millimeter film. So, some of the main benefits behind shooting a larger film negative, if you aren't aware, not only do you get less obvious grain because you're collecting a larger overall image, but basically you get smoother gradation. With a larger film negative, you get smoother transitions in exposure and gradations in color. Basically, you get a much more pleasing image with a larger piece of film. That's really why people go for that medium format or large format photography. It not only lets you get better color transitions, but it also lets you get that higher resolution that a lot of people are after with film. So how much larger is 6x7 compared to 35 mil? You know, a lot of people, when they start out shooting film, they'll shoot 35 mil because it's super easy to find. You can get anywhere. This is one of my first rolls I ever shot. I think this is Kodak Gold 200, so not exactly top shelf stuff, but it's always the same surface area. It's full frame. It's what modern mirrorless cameras and DSLRs are striving for, emulating a 35 mil surface area, right? So this is not a small format by today's standards. Now, when you compare it to the ridiculous size of 6x7, you can see how much larger the film negative is. I think I can just make out individually, just in this little light, the individual pictures on the 6x7 roll. This is a gigantic negative. You can see individual images from a big distance away. So this is a roll of 220 I recently shot. It was expired film, but the great thing about the Pentax Z6 is that it can take both 120 and 220 film. And that's really awesome, letting you shoot older vintage film you find, no matter what medium format size it is. So one of the most satisfying parts about this camera, other than the aesthetically pleasing wooden handle, is of course the shutter sound it makes. So it's pretty damn nice, the sound it makes. It's kind of ridiculous, like I'm firing blank. It's okay, don't worry, I'm not wasting film. But this is a gigantic mirror slapping out of the way. So with the original model of the Pentax Z6, you do have to be careful when taking off your lens and the prism at the top of the camera. Always take off your lens before you take off this top meter prism. There's a physical chain that connects this prism through the lens, and if you disconnect the lens first, you can break something. So I would highly recommend not doing that so you don't break anything. That's my recommendation. I opted for one of the Pentax Z6 with a meter in the lens, and it looks like kind of like a Geiger counter almost, where it's got like just like a needle up and down. It's not one of those nice horizontal meters that we get in the mirrorless or DSLR cameras of today. There's a huge mirror in here, and I know it may not look that big, but it's pretty freaking big. It moves out of the way. It gets moving. You can see it. It's pretty big. And the mount on the back end is gigantic. So I have the 2 lenses I've opted for are the 150 2.8 lens. Now I bought this with the camera. It came as a bundle, and it's very good. It's about a 75 mil equivalent f1.4. Pretty good option for those looking to get traditional style portraits. So a lot of the Pentax lenses are prime lenses you're gonna find for the 6.7 system. And obviously it comes down to the complexity of building a medium format zoom, especially since this camera was launched in the 60s. Now, I recently attained this. Now this is a legendary piece of glass. This is the Pentax SMC 105 f2.4. This is the fastest lens that's available for the system as far as I know. And this thing is crazy sharp. I bought a late version of the lens because it has better coatings. Older versions, because they have thorium in them and they're radioactive, will start to yellow over time. I didn't want that in the lens copy I had. Also, this new coating the late version has is more resistant to flare. So I don't think that's a bad thing ever. I like shooting backlit portraits. I do that a lot. So a big thing here is it collects a little bit more light. It's an f2.4, which means it has a larger aperture. So it's about, it's a 105, so about a 52.5 f1.2. It's a little weird because the aspect ratio isn't the same as 3x2. This is a great camera if you're looking to get into medium format portraits. This lens might be the reason that so many people buy this camera. This lens is amazing. I think George from Negative Feedback said it looks like it gives you a large format look, and I kind of agree. This thing is a beast of an SLR. You do have to commit to using it. So with 120, you only get 10 shots per roll, and with 220, you get about, I don't know, like 20-ish, depends on the model of the camera. Sometimes the spacing can get weird in these older film cameras. It's hard to adjust, really, without a different new gear mechanism. So let's talk about loading this thing. So first things first, are you gonna load 120 or 220 film into this? It'll normally tell you right here if you're shooting 120 or 220 film, and if you're gonna switch, you do that inside the camera. So like any 35mm camera, you can open the back. On the Pentax, there's a switch on the lower left, you pull down like this, and you pop up in the back. Now, if you're gonna switch between 120 and 220 film, you wanna do that here. So the plate will move back and forth. You go to the right for 220 and to the left for 120 because it applies different pressure to the film roll. That way it knows. Just looking at this, you can see how big the image area is in the Pentax 6.7. It's mostly just a container for the film. So if you've never loaded medium format film before, you need to know that you need a film spool. Like any film, it goes from left to right across the camera. So there's two tabs at the bottom here that you'll want to pull. You want to pull this open like this, separate this part out. And on this one, if you don't have a film spool in here, you need to pull this open to put the tab in there. So let's cover some basics. If you've never loaded medium format film into a camera before, it goes from the left side of the camera into the right side of the camera, just like 35mm. One key factor is you'll need a film spool to have it collect the film on the right side. This is what a film spool looks like. This is what 120 film lives on when it first arrives. And you'll need a used empty one to put on the right side. So with both of these tabs down, what you'll want to do is put this film spool and load it onto the right side of the camera. You put it in, close this tab on the right side, making sure it's lined up here. Close this, and now this side is good. You have to make sure that the bottom and the top both match up with their indents so that this spool side is locked in, so it'll transition the film over when it's time for that. So next, let's go over to the big part. Opening film and loading it. So unlike 35mm film, 120 film comes in these bags. It doesn't come in a cartridge, so it's just in a kind of almost raw state roll. Let's open this film up. You can just tear it at any corner. And I am loading my preferred film of choice right now, Portra 400. Once you get the adhesive tape off, what you'll want to do is pull out this tab. So like you put the empty film spool on the right side, you'll want to load this full film roll onto the left side. So make sure the bottom is lined up, make sure the top indent lines up with this. I think we're good to go. This is loaded in. So what you want to do is pull this all the way across and feed it into this spool here. Should be a place to put it in here. Feed it into the empty spool. Then you're going to turn this. what you want to do is have this arrow lined up with this red dot right here. Close the back of the camera. So turn it, crank it. I think that's it. I think we're on the first shot now. And this is now a fully loaded Pentax 6.7, a weapon of choice for many people. All right, now that you've seen how this camera is loaded, let's talk about some of the issues and the big benefits of using a camera like this, other than just the large film real estate. So this camera is a bit, unergonomic. So it's kind of weird that the handle's on the left side when you would normally focus with your left hand because the shutter button's on the right side. So that's really kind of an issue sometimes when you go to try and focus and make sure everything's right, and then you gotta hold the handle again before you pull the trigger. It's a little weird. It's a little odd sometimes how the wooden handle changes your behavior. Now, it is heavy. It's not gonna be the easiest thing to take on a hike if you're a landscape shooter. From what I've heard from other photographers, you don't want to shoot at a shutter speed slower than 1/125th of a second. Basically, it comes down to the shutter slap and the vibration from the gigantic mirror flipping out of the way. You really do want to stay above 1/125th. This camera is fantastic to use from a manuals lover's perspective. It's so tactile using this, manually focusing, making sure you're getting everything perfectly right. The focus ring is so smooth on this 105 f2.4 because it's designed with manual focus in mind. The wooden handle also gets a lot of compliments in public. I'm not gonna complain about the wooden handle. I think it was definitely worth the extra $130 I paid for it. Now, the one thing I'm gonna show you is the images. I've shot so many things with this camera. I've shot a ton of portraits because this is really a portrait photographer's dream medium format camera. You got fast lenses with close focusing ability. You can really blow out the background, separate your subject out, really make them pop even from a distance with these fast lenses. So I'm gonna show you some of the images I've taken over the past 2 to 3 months with this camera coming up now. All right, so would I recommend this camera to an aspiring medium format film photographer? And I would have to say absolutely. The benefits of the larger film real estate really do show up in the final image, but you do have to be aware of the limitations of the camera. These fast manual lenses will slow down your shooting. You can't be popping off frames like you can with a 24 to 70 per se or 50 mil on autofocus. you have to be meticulous. When each shot costs multiple dollars, you do have to make sure that it's actually in focus and everything's good to go. So as long as you're aware of how heavy and big and expensive it is to shoot this, I think for certain work, it's fantastic. Like, it lives on a tripod, getting you that ultra high resolution with the gigantic 6x7 negatives. But you can also treat it like a 35mm SLR and walk around with it. It's not a big RB67. It's not a system camera that weighs pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds and has to kind of sit there as a brick on a tripod. You can walk around with it. You can explore a little bit. You can take it on a hike. If you know what you're getting into, I would absolutely recommend the Pentax 6.7 for anyone looking to shoot portraits on medium format.